and we should be up.
I still see the capture
Yep.
the flag screen. Just look, there we are. Welcome everybody to today's CTF walkthrough for the Flash CTF from MetaCTF for the month of September. That was a lot of CTF I said there. I apologize. Hello everybody. Welcome. We're joined today by Roman. How do you even say your last name? I don't know if I've ever asked you.
Bohook.
Bohook. All right. Now I know. I'll probably never remember. We're also joined by Megan Bentley here. We are going to do some pre-show banter with y'all for about 15 minutes or so before we get started with the walkthrough, because we want to make sure we give everybody enough time to get logged in. And of course, if y'all have questions, Roman and I are here to help answer any questions you might have. But yeah, excited to go through the walkthrough with you. How many participants did we have for the CTF last month?
Let me check. I think we ended up having around 870, it seems. So pretty good turnout. I think for October, we already have almost as many signed up. It's going to be a busy month.
I'm excited for that one. How many challenges we have for October?
Probably 6 or 7. So we used to do 5, and then about 2 or 3 months ago, we switched over to 6, and I think this time we did 7. Not quite sure why. I forget the reasoning. Maybe we just had an extra challenge that we thought was good and we wanted to release it, or we didn't have a good, like, medium difficult challenge. But it's probably going to be 6 or 7.
Awesome. I was trying to see if I could tag Discord. I don't know if we have a role for that, for the Flash CTF. But yeah, we are in the Black Hills Information Security Discord server in live chat. If y'all want to come and hang out with us. Make sure I get this rolling here.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Roman, you'll be joining us next week at Wild West Hacking Fest, huh?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, to people who know me, I sound like a broken record, but Wild West Hacking Fest is definitely my favorite security conference. And so I'm really excited to come.
Yeah. I say the same thing. I feel like it's not fair for me to say that anymore because I work for Black Hills, But even before I worked here, it's like a same thing, broken record. Even before I worked here, it's like Wild West has been my favorite conference to go to. It's so much fun. It's so unique too. So it's a good experience.
Well, and part of me wishes that it could grow, but at the same time, I really appreciate how, well, I mean, it's not small, but it's like almost 1,000 people. It's not a small conference, but in comparison to like RSA, it feels really small.
Well, we have Denver to make it bigger.
Yep. But Denver is just such a cool place.
Yeah, it's a unique place to go to.
It's really pretty too, especially this time of year.
Yeah. I went back in 2018, and it snowed a little bit that year, which as a person from Florida was very nice. And it was like 18 degrees. It was really cool.
Well, so right after Wild West Hacking Fest, I'll be flying back to Virginia on Saturday, and then on Monday, I'll be flying to Florida for the Cyber Bay conference. So I'll get to see both extremes.
Is there anybody in the chat right now that's going to be going to Wild West or to Cyber Bay? I haven't checked out the Cyber Bay Con yet. In Tampa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Andy Stefan's going to have a booth in the Hacker Village there, with some keyboard, well, definitely Wi-Fi hacking, and I think it was keyboard hacking labs. We'll have some other vendors with labs there as well.
Yep. I don't know why it wasn't ringing a bell for me. But as soon as you said that we were bringing the labs there, I was like, oh, yeah. That's, yeah.
Well, there are almost a lot of tickets, and everyone who gets the ticket can, John is doing a class there on Monday. And so that's included with the ticket. John Strand. And so if you want to see him in person, another opportunity.
Yeah. That's always a fun time. Are you working on anything else that's fun and exciting?
I mean, well, I love doing what I do, running competitions, but in October we have, I think, 30 or 40 CTFs already scheduled, and so it's a crazy time of year for us. But yeah, mostly just preparing for all kinds of CTFs. I mean, I think the week of the Wabasaki Fest, we're going to have like 5 or 6 or 7 CTFs happening at the same time.
Oh, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be fun though.
Mm-hmm.
I've just been
What about
working
you,
on
Zach?
I've been working on our certification page for the ACE cert, which is funny. Like, we talked about this before we got started today, but it's funny that you kind of asked me that question because it directly relates to you, because the ACE certification is hosted on the MetaCTF platform. So that's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to getting it out there, like, officially. We've done a couple alpha beta runs with the exam, and it's gone over pretty well. So now I think we're at a point where we want to get it officially launched out there. And if you guys are not aware, anti-siphon training is going to be, we'll have our own certification. It's going to be right along the lines of, something security plus or more advanced related. There's going to be 100 question multiple choice exam, which leads into 5 challenges that you need to complete, which are on the MetaCTF platform. So those are, more of that like capture the flag style type of challenge that you're going to do. They're all associated with the 3 classes from John Strand as Pay What You Can classes: active defense, cyber deception, getting started in cybersecurity, and SOC core skills. Those 3 classes will make up basically all the material that you'll need for the exam. So the 100 questions, the 5 challenges that you'll do. Once you complete the 5 challenges, the last part, which is like the most exciting part for me, I think, and everybody else, is that we are required to write 2 reports based off of the 5 challenges that you completed. So you can pick any 2 of the 5, and you write a report, basically laying out what you did, what you accomplished, what vulnerabilities you found and whatnot, and how you successfully completed the challenge and all of that. And then you submit that, and that basically makes up the ACE-T exam and certification. And then that's all public information that then gets shared. So like the results from your exam and those reports that you write, because that's how we want to have employees validate, or look for different ways to help validate your skills, right off the bat. So they'll be able to see like a public facing profile for you, to see all the different challenges you've completed. They'll be able to see like a virtual resume for you, and any other certifications and stuff that you've completed. But then it also show like the reports that you did for the exam. So it really can give an employer a good idea and good sense of, who you are as a person, how you write, your reports and put information together and things like that. So very excited for that. Thank you, Roman, for helping put that together. Computers Cyber KW is talking about our ACE-T certification, which is basically there are CTF components, I guess you could say, as part of that. There are challenges involved there. We're partnered with MetaCTF, so we'll have more information coming out soon, officially, about the ACE-T certification. So it's 100 choice. I can never say this right. 100 questions, multiple choice. I don't know how to word that best. Exam followed by challenge, like hands-on challenges that you have to complete, followed by 2 reports that you have to write.
Yeah, and in case you're asking about the Flash CTF, we're going to start those in a few minutes. We're just giving everybody a chance to log in, a chance for us to test everything as well. But we'll start at around 2:30.
If anybody has questions about anything that's here, we are more than happy to help out. Computer cyber, you say you go to the MetaCTF, it's hard to you. There are write-ups and stuff out there that do exist, and I know that there are some other walkthroughs out there for for past videos that we've done, with Roman.
Mm-hmm.
I would highly suggest checking out, some of those videos or other walkthroughs that exist out there to help you kind of get through some of the different challenges, just to get your feet wet with them initially. I think,
Yep.
Getting started, it's like a needle in the haystack oftentimes, and it can be confusing, and it's totally okay to do these walkthroughs with us and read through different write-ups and stuff that tell you how to complete these challenges. Once you do that a few times, then you'll start to learn kind of like what we're looking for, what different challenges are looking for. You'll learn some of the different like skills or tools that may be used and things like that. And then eventually, like, you'll learn how to figure out some of these challenges on your own. But it's totally okay to get as much help as you need as you're just getting started.
Yeah, and one of the best ways to get better at CTFs is by participating in CTFs. I don't think you can take a class on CTFs and go participate in one and do really well, because it just takes like pattern recognition, just understanding how the format works. After you do it once or twice, it'll get a lot easier, and at that point you can start focusing on learning new skills. But that's why we also publish all the write-ups for our Flash CTFs. That's why we do this live stream, to kind of help walk through some of these topics. And in the Flash CTF, we generally try to have 3 or so challenges that are relatively easy that we expect a good number of people to solve. But then they get difficult pretty fast, because it is competition. We only have a limited amount of time. So if you can't solve some of the harder ones, that's totally fine. Like I mean, I know the solutions, so I can talk about them, but there are several challenges that if I was in the position of participating in the Flash CTF, there's no way we have solved them during the competition.
I feel like I answered a similar question on Reddit the other day. It was kind of funny because I'm subscribed to a subreddit called Growth Hacking, which has nothing to do with like actual hacking. I need to mention, and it has to do with more like marketing type of stuff, like some like marketing hacking. That's what that subreddit's all about. But somebody posted in there like, hey, I'm having a hard time with CTFs. Is everybody like terrible at them when they first start out? And somebody was like, I think you're in the wrong area. Like, this doesn't make sense. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like totally a question I could answer. Like, I'm involved in both of these areas right here. And I was basically like, yeah, like when, you're just starting out, like you are going to feel like you don't know anything. And I think that's how everybody starts out with CTFs. Like, bluntly, I think you are going to feel dumb, because you don't know what you're doing. And I wouldn't take that as a harsh criticism towards yourself. I would look at that as a learning opportunity for you, and just remind yourself, okay, I don't know this, and it's okay not to know this. Maybe I can figure it out. What are the next steps that I need to figure this out? Can I do this? Can I figure this out? Just because you don't know something doesn't make you, less intelligent, just less knowledgeable now, and you can gain that knowledge later. And I think CTFs often have that, like, a weird stigma to it, where it can be like very, I don't know, very hard to get started, because it can be such a difficult, like, I guess, initial challenge for you. But I think, again, like doing these like what we're going to do today, and like all the other walkthroughs out there that exist, like that's why they exist. Like that's why they're here for you, is to really help you and guide you a little bit to get you to where you need to go. And that's totally okay. So yeah, sorry, kind of like reiterated that a couple times, I guess, but it's really important. I feel that people know that, understand that. So I don't know, you probably see a lot of that too, Roman, just with what you guys do, just like people like coming up to a challenge and just getting so frustrated initially and thinking like, I'm just such an idiot, I can't figure this out. And they get discouraged, and I really don't want people to feel that way.
Yeah, we try to avoid that. We try to throw in a handful of questions that we expect folks to solve, and we try to, especially for a bunch of the easier ones, like we explicitly tell people that if you're having a hard time with these ones, if you're not sure what to do, just come to us. We'll walk you through. And the idea is that we just want people to get started, and as soon as they solve one challenge, a second challenge, they'll start getting hooked, and they'll start realizing that, oh, like it actually is doable. And then after, you know, the first CTF, they only solve, you know, a quarter of the challenges. The next CTF, they solve, you know, 28%, and then 35, and then keep getting better and better. When I was in high school, I was really interested in cybersecurity, and I saw all of these. You know, I went to a few conferences. I got invited to, you know, go attend a few events, and I heard these people talking about like different cybersecurity projects, concepts that we're working on, and it always seemed to me like it's such a like foreign language, because you know, they would say 10 words and I only understood like the articles and, you know, the verbs in there. I didn't know any of the nouns. Um, and, and that felt a little bit discouraging to me. But then over time, you know, as I started doing CTFs, as I started going to conferences, talking to people, like actually doing this in my job, it all became a lot more understandable. And so it's not like cybersecurity is not one of those fields where you have to have like some kind of genetic predisposition to do well in it. It's just something that takes time. There are some fields that I'm sure, you know, like if you're a genius, you'll do really well in, like binary exploitation or cryptography. But I think in general, cybersecurity is not something that you have to be born being good at it. It's something that you can learn. It just takes time.
For sure. Yeah. I agree with you 100% on that, man. Like I can't add anything to that. I think we're ready to get started, though. We're at time here. So do you want to go ahead and start sharing? And we'll go ahead and dive
Sure.
in into computer cyber. Don't give up. Just don't give up.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen any of the resources that BHIS is putting out, I mean, there's the InfoSec survival guides. Jason Blanchard does, you know, live streams on Twitch, helping folks find jobs and, you know, review their LinkedIn and resumes. There are a lot of free resources that can help you get started or advance at least a little bit.
I'll get Jason's LinkedIn for you. Here's job
It
hunt like
is.
a hacker.
Yeah, and it is hack time.
It is. Let's.
Okay. All right. Well, I think my screen shared. I can. Yeah, there it is. So on September 18th, 2 weeks ago, we had our like 20th Flash CTF or so. We've been doing this for a while now, but we had 7 challenges. I want to shout out to these top 3 teams for doing really well. We end up having 7 challenges. Top, let's see, top 20 people were able to solve 6 out of the 7. And the reason the rankings are the way they are is because the team that gets to that point value first ends up ranking higher. So for example, this user reached 1,050 points before this user. And so that's kind of why how the rankings work. And this is common because we only have, I mean, it is a Flash CTF. We only have a very limited number of challenges. And so there's only, I mean, we expect most people to solve 1 challenge, then 2 challenges, then 3 challenges. And so you'll see a lot of groupings like these. I'm going to go through maybe 4 or 5 of the challenges. I say this every time, but usually we mix up. These are the standard categories of challenges that we have. And every month we try to mix up which ones are difficult and which ones are easy. Some challenges like binary exploitation are generally difficult just because there is no easy way to make a binary exploitation challenge that somebody with little experience can solve. And I think we had a few of those, so we're kind of running out of ideas for really easy ones. So that's why binary exploitation is usually on the harder side. But most of these other categories, we tend to mix their difficulties in between CTFs. And our next event is going to be on October 30th. You can find the link on the dashboard. You can find the link right here and sign up for it. You know, as always, we have some great prizes. We have cash. We have training from Anti-Siphon, training from TCM, all kinds of cool prizes. All right, so the first challenge in the CTF was called dot hidden files. The dot is a hint, and I can explain more a little bit later if you don't know why there's a dot. It's a miscellaneous challenge. in CTFs, every CTF organizer does something different with categories. There are a few standard categories that, like, OSINT, reconnaissance, forensics, web exploitation, that you will see in almost every CTF. But then things like, Bash, or like Windows security, or privilege escalation, or network security, and, mobile application, or like reverse engineering, those kinds of categories, depending on the CTF you run, they might have their own category, but in most cases, there's just not enough content to justify having their own separate categories, so they're lumped in some of the other ones. And that's kind of one of the reasons we have other, is just that this is not as common as like web exploitations. That's why it's a separate category. But it says, start the container below to begin. You've been given SSH access to a Linux system. The welcome message tells you there's a hidden flag somewhere in your home directory. Can you find that hidden flag? We had almost 400 teams solve it. So if I click spawn container and click open, it's going to take a few minutes for it to load. I'm just going to keep refreshing the page until it loads, and there it is. Let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah. So like the challenge description says, what you're looking here is a Linux shell. Linux, for those of you who don't know, is an operating system that is known for being open source, unlike Windows or Mac. Often you'll see Linux used by server. So a lot of the infrastructure on the internet, a lot of the like critical business systems run on Linux, and it's a, I guess I don't know, Zach, if you have any, how would you describe Linux? It's a developer-friendly operating system. It's very configurable, and there are a lot of different variations of it. It may not be quite as easy to use as Windows.
Yeah. Well, I would say if anybody if anybody has ever used Mac, like a MacBook, like that's Linux. That's honestly, it's just Linux. Like I think most of the different,
well, technically,
yeah. I mean, it's Unix, whatever, but all relatively the same though. So if like you were to like look at the Mac GUI, the graphical user interface, and compare that to like many of the other Linux distributions out there, you're going to see a lot of similarities. And then you'll even see a lot of similarities to just how they both like kind of operate. So that's always like, I think, my best comparison. And anytime I'm telling somebody, hey, if you want to learn Linux, if you have access to a Mac, it's almost the same thing and can really, get you started. And then even vice versa. If you have access to Linux and you want to figure out Mac, well, you pretty much have it down there, but I would say like nowadays with like the different different versions of Linux that are out there, they're not as intimidating as they once used to be. And there's a lot more applications and things that they're being used on them day in and day out. So you are finding them used a lot more, these days.
Yeah, and you can play around with these operating systems yourself. I mean, you can install VirtualBox, you can install VMware. I forget the name, Workstation Pro, or what they have a few different products that just depending on the operating system. But also during Flash CTFs, we give you free access to our Cloud Labs, and so you can actually start a few these different operating systems and just work in them or test them out. But so when it says here SSH access, it means similar to Telnet on Windows. SSH is just a protocol for accessing a system remotely. And so when you log in here, kind of this is what you're looking here is the terminal or the shell of the system. Similar in Windows, when you have command prompt, it's the same thing, but for Linux. If you do a little bit of research of how to work in a Linux shell, you'll probably learn a few commands right off the start. One of them is going to be ls. And what this does is it lists all of the files in your home directory. And if I create a new file, for example, I can use a command called touch, and I'll say, hello.txt, and I run ls again, it's going to show that file that was created. There's a way to make files hidden. For example, Windows has the same functionality. If you have a bunch of system files or your app data directory, a bunch of stuff that like Windows relies on or your operating system relies on that aren't really relevant to the user, the operating system just hides them. And if you are a power user, or if you want to be able to see those files, you can easily enable that. But same thing with Linux, and essentially any the way you look at hidden files is you add a flag to the command called -a, and this means that it's going to list all the files, including hidden ones. You can see right here, there's a .hidden flag file that presumably contains the flag, and that's kind of where the challenge title, why the challenge title had a dot, is because in Linux, any file that starts with a dot is considered to be a hidden file. So the way you can look at it is you can use the command called cat, and you just start typing the file name. Use tab on your keyboard, and that's going to print the flag. It's going to read this file. I personally prefer to use this command just so it lists all of the files in order. Sometimes it's difficult to see them individually. These two entries at the top are directories. This is the current directory, and this is the directory above the current directory. And so, but in order to solve this challenge, all I had to do is find this hidden file and read the flag. Interesting thing in Linux is you can also have file names that have only spaces, and so you can actually create a file. For example, I'm going to say hello. I'm going to write hello to a file that only consists of 3 spaces, and so then when I run ls, you will see this file right here. And if I run ls-alt, you also see this file here. It's just a neat thing on Linux that you can do to mess with people, like we've done in our CTFs. But this is the basics. And if you want to use the shell for other things besides this challenge, you're welcome to go in, spin up a container and just play around with it. The reason we gave you this instead of like an actual SSH command is just so that it's easier for people to get started with this without having to download any tools. Any questions on this one?
I haven't seen any, but that's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's really neat. Just being able to create a web shell out of this, and completely avoids having people to use SSH or install their virtual machines or even wait 10 minutes for a VM to start up.
Anybody have any questions on that challenge there? Just let us know in the chat. Wait like a few seconds here because I know there is a delay.
Well, and I can always come back to it, but once you solve the challenge, you can come back and submit it. There's usually a flag field right here. Because this competition ended, it doesn't show the challenges anymore. But if you go to the practice environment, it's going to be at mctf.io/practice. And you access that UI, you will see all of the challenges from our previous Flash CTFs. You'll see, who solved it first, how long it took them to solve, just to kind of, some bragging rights for people. But all the challenges from our previous Flash CTFs are available right here, and all the solutions that I'm describing are public on our blog. So if you go to resources blog, challenge write-ups, you'll see all the write-ups for our previous Flash CTFs right here. All right, so moving on to the next challenge. It's called Digging for Answers, and it's an OSINT/reconnaissance challenge. It reads, my friend is certain that there's a flag associated with the Digging for Answers chals.mctf domain, but there isn't even a website hosted. In fact, I can't even resolve the domain to an IP. Can you investigate the domain to see what I must be missing? She also kept mentioning the word text, but I'm not sure why she thought that would help. So there are several hints in this challenge. First of all, the challenge title starts with digging for answers. And if you start, the general process for solving these challenges is, reading the description, reading the title, and then just starting to, research the different concepts that you're not sure about, trying to research kind of, on Google and Bing, whatever your preferred search engine is, to see how to approach this challenge. Nowadays, ChatGPT is probably going to solve this for you. It's going to tell you the answer. It's a valid solution. It's not against the rules to use ChatGPT, but especially if you're trying to learn, well, in a competitive environment, you're welcome to use ChatGPT because if you're trying to solve challenges fast. If you're trying to learn, I would recommend, using it more as an aid versus like a way for you to solve the challenges, because then if it just gives you the answer, it's not very helpful. But if you start looking at the domain, there are a few different things we can do. First, I will, just put it into Google and see what happens. And like the description said, it said, the website's not working. There's no website. There's no name. And with this, if we Google this error, it's going to tell us that the browser can't convert a website domain name to an IP address because the DNS server, well, either the DNS server failed to do its job. Okay,
Always
this response
DNS. Come on.
Well, this response is putting the blame on the DNS server, not on the website host. Not on the person who hosted the website. In this case, it's not the DNS's fault. DNS is working fine. It's just that we didn't give that domain name an IP address. And there are a few different tools you can use to check those IP addresses. I mean, first of all you can just do it online. Let me see. Online DNS lookup, something like this. So if you don't want to use any command line tools, you can just put in a DNS, and it's going to do some checks. Find DNS records. Yeah, and so you can see here that this tool didn't find any records. This tool didn't find any records except the TXT record. I'll come back to that. This tool, you can either pick specific records or just search for all of them. Okay, I see. This is a scam. It looks like an ad. So I'm just going to, I don't like this website. So DNS or domain name system is a way for machines to, I guess, assign like human readable, nice domain names to IP addresses. And whenever you go to a website like google.com, metactf.com, anti-siphon.com, the internet can't really route based on that name alone. What it does is it sends a request to a DNS server, and every operating system has several DNS servers pre-configured. Sometimes it comes from your internet service provider. Sometimes you can set it manually, like if you'd like to use Cloudflare or Google DNS. But it sends a request to that DNS server, and the DNS server comes back and says, hey, google.com is actually at this IP address. And then the computer takes that IP address, puts it on a packet, and then sends it off, and that's how kind of the internet works. There are several different types of records. There's A records, CNAME records, TXT records. A records is the common record for IPv4 for resolving a domain name to an IPv4 address. So, for example, if I type in MetaCTF.com, it's going to say that the IPv4 address of this domain is actually this right here. Sometimes you'll see a handful, like multiple IPv4 addresses in response. Like, for example, if I type google.com, I don't know if it's going to give me multiple records. And this essentially gives the DNS server the ability to pick one at random. So sometimes they might have special rules, like this says, pick this one 20% of the time or this one 80% of the time. Sometimes that's done on the DNS server level. But this is mostly for load balancing and reliability. You can also use a tool like NSLOOKUP. So if I type NSLOOKUP and I type in metactf.com, it's going to pull up the A record for that domain. The challenge title used the word dig, and so that's the other tool that you can use, and you can say dig. I want to find the A record for metactf.com, and that's going to pull up the response for me right here. The nice thing about dig is that you can also specify exactly which server you're trying to look at. So, for example, right now, it's sending the I guess I'm using WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, and I assume there's some kind of built-in DNS server, so that's why it's sending it there. But if, for example, I want to ask Cloudflare for this domain, it's going to tell me that the answer for this is, the same IP address according to this server. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I messed up. You can specify at right here. Yeah, that's right. According to the server, this is the response. And so the way you solve this challenge is you either use some kind of online tool to look up the records, like we did right here, or you can use a tool called dig to look up a record for this domain. This one is not going to work because there is no a record. Like we mentioned, there is no website associated with this domain. But in the challenge statement, there was a hint that the word text was being mentioned. And one of the records that you can have in a DNS server is called a text record. And so the way you look it up is you just change a to a txt. And this will get you the text record for this domain. You can also do it, this tool will find it automatically. It's just going to try and find all the different records. So this is the flag. And in addition to text record, you also have NS records, MX records, NS or name server records. These are used to specify what is the name server responsible for the most up-to-date information for this domain. MX records are used for email routing and so forth. And so for TXT has a real-world use case as well. That's usually used by different vendors, by different services to verify that you actually own the domain. And the idea is that, for example, you're trying to set up some kind of like Mailjet or MailChimp or some kind of integration, and you want to prove to that service that you own the domain that you say you own. And what they might ask you to do is put some kind of text record on that domain, and then they're going to fetch the text record and make sure that it specifies the value that you were supposed to put there. And the idea there is that if you have control over a DNS server of some kind of tool, if you have control over a DNS server of domain, that implies that you have control over the domain. And so if I look up TXT records of some other websites, I don't know if this is going to return anything. You can see that there are a bunch of text records. So for example, Google tried to verify with these different services that, with DocuSign, for example, that Google owns this domain. It tried to verify with some of these other services that owns the domain. This is for, I think, for email verification. Any questions about this challenge before I move on?
If y'all have questions, you can throw them in the chat.
And I assume there are some MetaCTF courses that cover like DNS and a lot of these basics of like Linux systems and the different tools. Zach, I think you'd be a better person too.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to pull up some from John. Be probably the better ones there.
And the one that John runs are generally pay what you can.
Yeah.
So you can take it's a 16-hour course that you can pay whatever you want to attend. All right. Well, if there are any questions, we can always come back to this one. The next one is a reverse engineering challenge, also solved by a good number of teams. It's called Bad OPSEC, and it reads: a new hacker has created a flag exfiltration tool in Rust that sends captured flags to a remote logging service. We believe that the hacker has not been very careful with their operational security and has left a few clues in their work. Your task is to analyze the binary to find the author's handle, download the stealer here, and open it with the password infected. So it's not real malware, but it might look like it. And so that's why we put in a zip file, because doing encrypting a zip file with some kind of malware and setting the word password infected is something that's usually done commonly in the industry, especially if you're trying to share some kind of sample of malware that is malicious. But it's also to prevent potential antivirus tools from flagging our domain, even though there's nothing malicious on it. So if we, I guess, look to the description, we're given some kind of zip file that contains a piece of some kind of binary, or binary is just another word in this case for a program or an executable that is malicious. And our goal is to analyze that program to find traces of the user's handle. So I'm going to download the file. I can just click on it, and it's going to download it. If I open it up right here, I'm just going to extract it. It's going to, well, it's going to give me an error. So I'm going to use a different tool. It's going to ask me for a password. Okay, and there it is. So looking at this file just on, without any tools on Windows is kind of difficult. One thing I can do is I can open up a Notepad or Notepad++, or like I'll do Notepad just for fun. And if I drag this file into Notepad, it's going to look like gibberish because there's no because this is a binary file. But if you look through it, you'll actually find references to the flag. One way you can solve it is just search for the word MetaCTF, which is the flag format, and you will see the flag. The idea behind this challenge is that the hacker's home directory was named the string, and when the hacker compiled the program, there were some references to their home directory, and it's actually not that uncommon to leave these kinds of artifacts in in programs you compile. Like the same thing happens in Word documents and in PDF documents, in images that you take. Often the tools you use, they always contain some kind of metadata. Well, in this case, it's not metadata, but like PDF files, images, Word documents, they contain metadata about the file that you created. And often you can see, you might send a PDF file to somebody, and then you can go and actually see like, oh, look what that person's computer name, what's their username. I think I might have shared this in one of the previous live streams before, but when I was in college, I went to University of Virginia, and UVA is notorious for its secret societies, and occasionally they would send out like PDF announcements that are anonymous. There would be signed anonymous in the PDF file. There would be labeled something, that doesn't have any references. But if you look at the PDF file and then you just, right-click, view file information, you can see the name of the person that created the file. You can see like when they created it, what computer they were using. So one of the things to be mindful of when you create files like these, if you don't want that to be public. But the same thing here, when the program was compiled, there were some artifacts left behind that could reveal the name of the person, or the username of the person that made this file. That's one way to solve it. Since this is a reverse engineering challenge, usually you would solve it using some kind of tool, and probably the most common first line of defense tool against these kinds of challenges is called strings. What it does is it takes a look at that file, so that blob of binary and text data that you just saw, and it pulls out just the printable strings to make your analysis a little bit easier. And so it comes pre-installed on, I think, most Linux systems. If you don't want to use Linux, you can also use CyberChef. We'll link to it right here. I will just upload that file. Let me see. Let me find it. Yeah, so I'm going to upload the binary file right here, and I'm going to use the strings operation. And what that's going to do is just find all of the different printable strings in this blob of gibberish. This is a lot easier to read through, and so if you skim through it, or if you can also specify the minimum length. Like we want to look at just like long strings. If you start looking through it, you'll quickly see the flag. Another way to solve this is to use the shell. So let me go into my directory. I'm going to right-click, copy link address, just so I can paste in the shell. I'm going to type wget, enter. Wget right-click to paste the link. Wget is a tool for downloading files from the internet. It's going to save it to this file. I'm going to run unzip flagsteel.txt zip it's going to give me an error because my zip doesn't work. So I have to use, I forget, I think it's NZ 7-zip. I already did this before this, so I'm going to use 7ZX. Yeah. So 7-zip is another tool that you can use. X means extract. Flag_stealer.zip is the name of the zip file. I click enter. It's going to ask me to replace the file I already have there. Yes, I want to replace it. It's going to ask me for the password, and it's infected. And there it is. So now if I run ls, I will see this file right here. And like I mentioned before, strings comes built in on most Linux systems. And so if I just type this command, it's going to print the same output that CyberChef did. I can pipe the output of this into grep. And grep is a way to find text to find specific strings of text in a file, in some kind of text data. And so if I search for MetaCTF, that's going to give me the same flag, like this. Yeah. It's a common problem with some CTF challenges, and we've been guilty of this before. But sometimes you might have this really, really difficult CTF challenge, and just because of the way the data is stored in the system, it ends up being stored in plain text. And so even though we might have wanted you to go through this like hour-long process to get the flag, you can just open up the file and Control F from MetaCTF and find it. Like for example, I think we had a memory forensics challenge where we went on a Windows system. There was a malicious Word document with a macro, and in that macro, there was the flag. And so the idea was that you would have to, use volatility or some kind of tool to analyze this this memory dump, find the running process, extract the Word document, extract the macro, and then in that macro, find the flag. But in reality, what happened is that you could still do all of that and solve the challenge that way, but you could also just look at the memory dump in a text in Notepad and Control F for MetaCTF, and that's going to give you the answer. And so we usually when we have that concern, we might obfuscate the flag a little bit. And sometimes if you can't find MetaCTF as is in a flag, you can try converting to like base64 and searching for that. We're mindful of that, so usually that won't be an issue with us. But a lot of other CTFs, like if you can if you search for a flag and you can find it, you can search for like a base64 encoded version of flag or something like that, and that's going to be that's going to give you the answer. Yeah, and there was a comment about graphing using regex for file paths. So if you're trying to approach this challenge, if you didn't know this was a CTF challenge and you were just given this information, you would try to find that kind of information in the file. So you would see if there's any metadata. You would try to find strings that contain home directories, and I think that's kind of the approach that we mention in our description here as well. That instead of searching for the flag, you should search for the home directory, because this would be more realistic. But searching for home takes a little bit of trial and error and just learning about the doing some research, realizing that there might be some information in the home directory. But strings here is kind of the answer. Any questions on this challenge?
I haven't seen any come through yet, but another reminder, if y'all have questions, you can put them in the Discord chat or on YouTube. We're watching all the places.
And I'm just noticing all the comments from Nerf Blasters. Yeah, I just took a really long path to get to strings. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you can just there are quick ways to solve these if you have an idea what you might be looking at. All right, so the next challenge we have right here is called Phone Home. It was solved by considerably fewer people than the previous challenges. And it says, I was walking home in the middle of this hacker conference, and my phone started dialing on its own. Thankfully, my friend happened to be recording at the time and got this audio of the incident. Can you help me find some clue that might lead back to the hacker? I doubt if I click play, people are going to hear it. I'm just going to try anyway, and Zach, tell me if you can hear it.
Nope. I don't hear anything.
Okay, yeah. But essentially, you hear a bunch of beeps at different frequencies, different pitches. And if you ever use like a physical like a phone with a physical keypad, these are the same tones that are being typed. And so if you're younger than that, and you've never had to use one of those phones, some of the hints, like the fact that we're talking about a phone started dialing, these hints would have kind of pointed you in the right direction if you didn't recognize the audio immediately. But I haven't done this before at the live stream, so I'm not sure if it's going to work. But let me try pulling it up in Audacity. Oh, I didn't have Audacity installed. All right, is there like an online spectrogram? Is that what it's called? Spectrogram. Let's try this. Can I upload a file? I'm just trying to show the file in a different way, so people without audio can actually hear it, can actually look at what it looks like. Yeah, there it is.
No, it's not coming through.
Yeah, so the audio is not coming through, but you can see the frequencies at which you can see what's happening in the audio. The y-axis is the frequency or the pitch at which the sound is made, and then I guess the brightness of the color is how loud that sound is. And so you can see right here, there's at a very regular intervals, you can hear there's a lower pitch sound, there's a higher pitch sound. Well, actually, there are two sounds happening at the same time. Low pitch, high pitch, slightly higher pitch, high pitch, and so forth. And if you find a spectrum analysis tool that actually tells you exact frequencies of these different blobs, you'll be able to see that those map to something called DTFM codes, DTMF codes. And so this is how phones used to operate. Where's the map? And so, for example, if you type in on your phone, if you press number 1, it's going to play two sounds at two frequencies, one at this frequency and one at this frequency. We don't quite see that what exact frequencies there are, but we can see that there are two beeps happening. And so once we get to this point, we have an idea of what it is that we're supposed to be looking at. And now we just need to find a way to convert these codes back into numbers. You could, let me see if there's a spectrogram player that has an actual scale. It's not showing us the frequencies. All right, last tool I'm going to try. Okay, well, where do I actually click to do this?
I think Restream is probably going to give us some issues with getting the sound to play, though.
Well, I'm not trying to play this. I'm just trying to show this the same diagram, but it actually has numbers on the y-axis. So you can map these back to this. Well, probably not going to work in this case. I think Audacity shows this. Audacity is just a really nice tool for audio editing, and has that functionality. But there are other ways you can solve this challenge without having to use Audacity. For example, you can use a tool. You can just type in DTMF. Is that what it is? DT. I I keep forgetting the DTMF, decoder online. And you can see if there's a tool online that will decode these tones for you. Let's try this. Generally, I wouldn't be so comfortable giving away my files and data to these random online services because you never know what they're going to do with these files. But in this case, I mean, it's a CTF challenge. We made the file. We've already made it public. We don't care what happens to it. So don't, if you're actually dealing with sensitive data, don't just go looking for online tools and send them all your sensitive files. But in here you can see, every second there have been a few different types. So there's 15558675309 pound symbol, and then you have these different numbers. So we can actually, so it decoded into something that looks like this. And so now we know that whoever was typing something on the phone typed these characters. Let me open up Notepad so you can see it. The first part, it might take you some time to look at this and figure out what's going on. So I'm just going to jump straight into the answer. So I expect that this process will take you some time during the competition. But after some analysis, you'll probably see that this first part is just a phone number. It doesn't have any useful information, and so we can keep it around, or we can eventually remove it. This part is the part that contains the flag. When I was solving this challenge, my initial approach was to try and use try to convert this into back into letters. On old phones, if you were trying to send an SMS text or some kind of text, you had to press different buttons multiple times in order to get the letters that you want. And I think that was called, I'll just say phone, keyboard, Nokia. Yeah, right here, for example. I'm not sure how well you can see, but if you're trying to send a message and you're trying to, for example, type the letter K, you have to press the button 5 twice. And that's how you can hide data. And so I thought that was the solution at first, but that wasn't the case. After looking at this for a while longer, you can start noticing that these numbers only contain, so the alphabet, or in other words, the possible characters in the string are only numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's no 8. Yeah, so there's no 8, there's no 9, there's no letters. Well, I guess you can have letters in DTM, but there's no 8, no 9. These are the only possible characters. And this is a hint that what you're looking at is a number in base 8. And that means that whatever the data representation that you're looking at only has 8 characters to to show the data. And so if I put this in to CyberChef, and CyberChef is I mention in every stream, but it's a tool we link right here. It's very handy. I put it in right here, and I do from octal. It's not going to work because it's expecting some kind of delimiter between every characters. So if I, for example, just do this for the first 4, you can start seeing that there's the word meta, and so you can manually do this for the rest. One thing I really like about CyberChef is that you can chain things together. And so I'm actually going to use a regular expression to split this string into bits of 8. So I think you can do a group of 3 characters at a time. And then you can say, I want to list the matches. And then I'm going to convert, bring the octal back. from octal, and our delimiter is not a space; it's now a line feed. And so there's your answer. Yep. Any questions for this one? I actually made a very similar challenge back in 2018 or 2015 or 2016, because I still had my old like Nokia around, and so I, instead of generating the I didn't make this challenge, but I like 10 years ago made the same challenge, but like I physically typed in a message on a phone that made those tones.
And that's fun though. That really takes it to a whole new level, if you will.
Well, and that used to be a way you could steal data. Like if you're in the vicinity of somebody who's texting a message, and you record that audio, you could have figured out exactly what they were typing just by the audio symbols, but by the sounds. I mean, with the equipment back then, you had to be pretty close to get a good enough quality.
Yeah,
audio.
for sure.
That is doable.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this challenge?
Yeah, I don't see any.
All right.
Good to go to the next one.
Cool. So this is gonna be the last one I'm going to walk through in the CTF. In this stream, we have two more, and these are definitely more on the difficult side. Once again, the solutions to all of these challenges are linked on our blog, and you can also find them from the event dashboard. Just click write-ups, and it's going to send you right to the write-ups for the /CTF. Since those challenges are harder, if you just look at the solutions, we don't expect. I mean, if this is your first time doing a CTF, don't feel like you have to be able to solve this challenge, immediately. This challenge is more to kind of give something difficult for top participants who've been doing this for a long time. But if you're generally trying to learn what's happening here and you have questions, I'd recommend you join our Discord server right here. We have a special section for write-ups, for questions, and there are a few thousand people who, well, not all of them will be able to help, but there's a good number of people in the Discord server who will be happy to give you hints and suggestions and help clarify some of these solutions, including people on our team. But going back to the challenge, this is a web exploitation challenge, and it's called Stratagem, and it says, our IT team removed the ability to upload files to our file share website due to security reports. I don't exactly know what the issue was, but maybe there are still more issues that haven't yet been fixed. And so you can download the source code. This makes the challenge a little bit more realistic, because instead of, there are two types of two, I guess, bins that you can put web challenges in, like white box and black box. And white box, we give you the source code. Black box, we don't give you the source code. They both have value and benefits, but the white box challenges are generally kind of more realistic because you actually get to see where the vulnerability is. But it does make it a lot easier for AI tools to just find the solution. So if we look at the, I've already downloaded it, so I'm just gonna open it. We have access to the source code right here, and I can examine it more later. And then we can also spin up our own instance of the server and look at it. It's going to take a few minutes, and there it is. So, the first thing you do with any web app, if you didn't have the source code, you would look at the view page source. You would try and find anything here. You do have access to the source code, so you don't actually need to do this here, but we'll do this later. But you can also try just registering and trying to see how the application works. So we have something here. We have, well, I guess I have to create an account. A password, confirm password, create account. 6 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Create account. Okay. Sign in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Well, since this is a live stream, others of you can actually go here and and work in my instance. But during the CTF, these containers that we spawn, they're unique per team. So whatever you do in this instance is not going to be shared. Is not going to be visible to any other team. So we have some kind of web application. It welcomes you. It gives you the ability to upload files, but that's been disabled. And it gives you the ability to download different files. So your projects and documents, there are 2 projects, and each of them contain 3 files. If I try clicking on one, it's going to go straight to downloading it, but I'm not interested. I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to put copy link address. And so I'm going to look at that and see what's happening here. Where's my notepad? Notepad. There it is. So the URL looks like this. This is the domain. This is the page that it's sending some kind of request to. It's sending a get request download, and it's specifying the file name of the file that you're trying to download. You could try, a handful of different things. You could try SQL inject. Well, you could try SQL inject. Well, I'm approaching this as if it's blocked. I haven't looked at the source code yet. I don't know. I'm pretending I don't know exactly what the vulnerability is. So that would be the process here. You would, try to find. You could try SQL injection. You could try something else. Whenever you see a file name being specified directly in the path, can sometimes mean there might be a directory traversal vulnerability. And what that means is it's a way for, so this application is going to serve a file that you enter right here, and it's going to, it's going to download the file, it's going to open the file and send it to you. And directory traversal means that you can just pick a different file. And not only you can pick a different file in this directory, you can also specify, hey, I want to go up one directory. I want to go up one directory. I want to go all the way to the Etsy folder. I want to look at the the shadow file, so I can download the password hashes, or or something like that. This is what a directory traversal attack usually looks like. And if you find a reference, it'll tell you in more detail what that might look like. And we can, there are a few ways you can confirm this. I mean, you can play around, you can try reading some kind of file that is there. Like, for example, you can, we know that this is, I think, running in PHP. So we can just try -- index.php. This is not going to work because there are some protections in the code. But I'm gonna get to those now. So if you look at the source code, the file is being downloaded from the index.php file, and it's sending the download get parameter, but the file name is the value. So if we look in at the index.php file and we read through it, we see that it loads in the user information, blah, blah, blah. And then it checks to see if the download get value is set. So in this case, it is set. And then it, well, before this, it makes sure that you're logged in. If you're not logged in, it's not gonna give you this data. If the file path, so the file path variable contains the value that was put in next to download. If it's not empty, if it's empty, it's going to give you an error. If it's not empty but actually contains something, it's going to replace all of the dot slashes with the file path with nothing, in an attempt to prevent directory traversal. And then it's going to append the projects directory, which is defined above, project / with the file path that you specified. So if we go back here, well, here, I'll just do this side by side. If you go back to what originally was right here, proj 001 %2f readme. %2f is simply a URL encoded space or slash. Once again, you can use CyberChef for it. And type URL decode. The reason this is important, the reason why browsers URL encode these different characters is because if instead of %2f, there was an actual slash right here, it might be ambiguous on how the server is supposed to parse this request. Like, I mean, there's a world where some web servers might treat this as the file as the directory name, and then treat this as the file name. And when you just because that's how you generally divide like directories in a URL. But if you replace this with a URL encoded value, then suddenly this just looks like some kind of data that you send, and there's and there's no ambiguity that this is the data being passed to this file. Most web servers will convert this URL encoded data in the application before sending back to you. So for example, right here, all of that where we get the value of the download variable, all of that is abstracted from us. It's already PHP already decoded the URL and sent it, and gives us the file that we intended to give us the data that we intended to send. But looking at this file, we know that this file, proj readme, is stored in a directory called projects. And so what's happening is that the application is currently in this directory. It goes up one it goes into looks in the projects folder, and then it's going to look at this file to serve it to you. And if we look at the source code, we'll see that data is actually right there already. readme.txt. Looking at this code, we can clearly see that this is indeed vulnerable to directory traversal. And the /issue here is that, well, the way you would traverse directories or go up a directory, go to a different directory, is you would use .. Let me show that to you in a that system right here. So I'm going to make a directory called test. In that directory, I'm going to create another directory. And in that directory, I'm going to create another directory. So if I go into test, I have one directory in there. And then if I want to go up a directory and list the files in the directory above, you can see right here, I would use two dots. So ls-alt ... and this will list the files above this directory. So ASDF is inside of test. And then if I go into this directory again, and you can see that which directory you're in right here. You can see it here as well, relative to your home directory. And if you show the file if you list the directory above it, you'll see the parent directory right here. Where this is useful is often, in Linux systems, you have some sensitive files. For example, there's a cat Etsy shadow file. It's probably not going to let me read it because I don't have the permissions. But if I do cat Etsy groups, for example, this file contains the list of groups in the system, and it's world readable. And if this is my current directory, and I was trying to get to that directory using relative paths, I would specify, well, like for example, I was in this directory. Paste. I need to go back one directory, another directory, so I'm going to test, and go back into Etsy password, for example. So you see how I went up a few directories just to go back to the root directory and read the file from there. The reason you have to do this is because often you can't just specify the root directory in these vulnerabilities. You have to use directory traversal to kind of go up a few directories and then continue from the start. So we don't have too much time, so I'm just going to skim through the solution. We know there is a flag stored in the system. If we look at the Docker file, well, there's a flag.txt file that contains the flag. But if you look at the Docker file, the permissions on that flag are only so that flag is only readable by the root user, and the application is not running as the root user. I'm pretty sure. Well, maybe it is. I'm pretty sure it's running as like a www data user. And so even if you use directory traversal to try and read the flag, you will not have permissions to do so. To help you with that, we've created a nice tool called read flag. It's a binary that if you run, it will just give you the flag. And all it does is it just opens the flag.txt file, and it reads it, and it sends it to you. But in order to run this file, run this program, you have to have remote code execution on the server. And so the issue here is the directory traversal doesn't necessarily give you the ability to run commands on the server. It only gives you the ability to read files. But the way you can exploit it is you can the way it's loading these files is it uses include, which means that it's executing these files as if they were PHP files. And so if you can find a way to write some PHP code on the system and execute it, you'll be able to run arbitrary code in the system. And the way there might be multiple ways to do this, but the way that we have in the solution is doing it through logs. Every time you visit any of these web pages, it's going to log certain things to the access log or error log of the web server. And in this case, in addition to the regular data, well, actually, I think it already does it by default. But one of the things that Apache logs is your user agent. And it doesn't encode it, it just logs the user agent. And so if you access this website with a custom user agent, you can do it using curl, you can do it using burp, or you can use browser developer tools, think network conditions. You can just manually specify a user agent. You can put in malicious PHP code in here that will look like this. Well, for now, I'm just going to say PHP info. This will just print whatever is on the server. And if I refresh the page with this command, with this user agent sent, this browser, the Apache server that's serving this PHP website is going to log this data inside of the Apache log file. And then we can use directory traversal to read that log file, which will then execute this command. And then once you're able to execute code once, you can execute whatever command, including the ability to execute that read file command. You can look at the full solution on our blog. One thing to note for this challenge, though, is that if you accidentally put in broken PHP code, it's going to break the challenge, because every time you're going to keep trying to look at the access log file, it's going to keep executing the broken PHP code and erroring. So you might just have to reset the challenge and start from scratch. And I forgot to mention the actual vulnerability, but in here, where it's trying to prevent directory traversal, all it does is it replaces this command with nothing. But for example, so if I'm trying to read, hypothetically, this file, after it goes through the filter, it's gonna look like just flag.txt, because it's going to remove all the instances of this malicious string. But if instead of this string I sent, if I add an extra / into all of these, maybe 2 dots, what does it do? If I added 2 dots to each of these, after it removes all of these commands, it's going to look like a regular string that we're trying to use. So that covers the solution for this challenge, mostly. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to post in Discord. Feel free to send us an email. Our next CTF is going to be on October 30th. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Well, we're a little bit over, but Zach, I don't know if we have time to answer a few questions or just.
Yeah, if there's any questions, y'all are more than welcome to put them in the chat, whether that's in Discord or via YouTube or Twitch or any of the platforms that we're streaming from. But I do want to give another shout out to the winners. So I know Megan has a graphic that we can put on the screen. So when that gets up, there we go. The winners for September 2025 were Mixiton, to Taskman, and Enzo Cut. Those are teams, right? Or are those individuals?
Individuals.
Individuals. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to those winners. It's so cool. And do you have a link for next week?
Yep, it's
or next month, sorry.
mctf.io/OCT 2025. Let me see. I
Say it
think
one
it
more
might
time.
be. I'm going to paste in the chat again, but yeah, sorry, I forgot to add the S. Here's the link. Oh, there it is.
I just want to put that in the Discord as well.
Yeah, and this is the short version.
Perfect. Thank you. If you guys want to participate in next month's CTF, you have plenty of time to prepare for it. There's the link in the chat. Can we solve the CTFs in a video on YouTube or Twitch?
Yep. Yeah. You're welcome to. They're public, so you can do a better job than me and publish your own video.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Definitely do it. Make sure you tag us and let us know. We'd be happy to share it out there with you too.
Yeah, and if you Google some of these challenges, you'll probably find a handful of other write-ups as well by other people too. So you're definitely welcome to do it.
All right. I don't think there's any other questions. So thank you all for being here with us today. We really appreciate you and your time, and we will see you next month for the October Flash CTF. And thank you again, Roman, and the whole MetaCTF team. We appreciate y'all. See you all next month. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Roman.